Hello, clever people, and welcome to my review for Phoenix Forgotten. So Phoenix Forgotten is based on the real Phoenix Lights that happened in 1997. This was a crazy event in which, in Phoenix, Arizona, lights happened over the city. They were in a triangular shape, and to this day, it is still unsolved what happened. And while this happened, a group of teenagers went out into a random desert in Arizona where they believed deciding the lights were about to happen again, and tried to search for them, and because of that, went missing. To this day, both the case of them missing has not been solved, or the case of the lights have not been solved. There have been, many connections between the two. And this film follows both those teenagers and the Phoenix Lights, and this crazy thing that went down in a mockumentary style. From the trailers, I got the impression that this would be a Blair Witch type horror movie. In fact, it looks like a carbon copy, but it actually isn't. This is more of a mockumentary, with the last 30 minutes being science fiction horror, while also not being completely terrifying. Maybe that was just me, maybe people will find it scary, but the last 40 minutes just sort of felt like part of the documentary, which, honestly, that sort of caught me by surprise, and I'm not sure if I quite liked it. The main issue with this film is the tone. Many times it's trying to feel like a documentary. Many times it's trying to feel like a drama. Many times it's trying to be like a horror. The tone in this film is extremely inconsistent, and it's not intentional, because that sometimes inconsistent tone can be intentional, like in The Night of the Hunter or Life is Beautiful. Those two films had inconsistent tones, yet you understood there was a reason behind it. This film does not have a consistent tone. It has a weird blend of documentary and horror and drama, and they really don't go well together. It really doesn't land, and it sort of makes for an awkward experience. However, though I was caught off guard by the documentary feel, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit, because I thought it was a tad unique. It was different than I was expecting. I was expecting this to just be a lazy, horribly done horror film that's trying to bank off of the horror crowd, the teenagers that will go out and see it just simply because it's a horror film. Thankfully, Phoenix Forgotten is a little bit more than that. It's a mockumentary, and I sort of liked that feel to it. I liked how it was different than I expected. Did it blend with the story very well? No, I didn't think so, and I think maybe they should have just went for a straight mockumentary or a straight horror look instead of trying to go for both. But I did sort of enjoy that they tried something new and different. Something else you can admire about this film is the lack of jump scares. This movie, honestly, does not have a single jump scare. The closest thing that they get to it is where you hear scratching and characters quickly turn around and realize it's not it, but they don't have a giant noise. It's not like they jump out at you. You already know that something's there. So I really did like how this film did not rely on jump scares to make you scared. However, at the same time, the movie is not quite scary. That is a huge issue with horror films, because the last 40 minutes, which are the part that is supposed to be scary, I really did not find scary until maybe the last 2 minutes, where I sort of felt an adrenaline rush, not necessarily scared, but I did feel adrenaline. Besides that, the rest of it didn't feel scary. They didn't create the right atmosphere, I felt, and maybe that's because of the found footage, maybe because it's something else. But when you don't have a good, horrific atmosphere around the situations that are going on, you can't quite delve into that horror world like you want to. Great horror films are able to do this, however the ones that can't aren't really that great and are quite forgettable. Unfortunately, Phoenix Forgotten falls into the worst side of that camp, because the film just really doesn't end up being very scary. Now, the Phoenix Lights are honestly a very interesting situation. Not a lot, no one knows about it, no one knows why they happened, it's still a huge mystery, there's tons of conspiracy theories, and the movie does elaborate on that point. It does introduce some interesting questions, not only into the Phoenix Lights, but also the situation of the kids going. A lot of people wonder, was it a love thing? Was it the fact that there's two guys, one girl, they both like the girl is going towards one guy, the other guy gets angry. They introduced that idea in it, which I thought was very interesting, but they also introduced a lot of other concepts of what could have happened. If it was ancient something or other, I forget what it is, but there's like a symbol that they equated it to, and there's a lot of interesting questions asked by this movie. Unfortunately, that does not necessarily make for an immersive film, because the tonal inconsistencies really mess with what's going on. I was never uninterested in this movie, but I was never quite entertained like I was hoping to be. I was hoping that I could go in and be extremely interested in the events of what was going on, and though I was interested, I was not quite immersed in it, because the movie felt more like a TV documentary, where it's trying to display the facts and show you them in an interesting way, yet at the same time, it's not going for a cinematic approach to it. And that was this movie. It did not have a very cinematic feel to it. It felt like a history original movie, and a high quality one at that, but it really didn't go for the cinematic experience, which is something that all movies need to do. Even if you have a small, realistic human drama, you still need to make it cinematic so that you feel like you are with the characters. Unless there is supposed to be an awkwardness or a disconnection between the audience and the movie so that they feel weird and that's part of the experience, unless it's going for that, the movie needs to be cinematic to be immersive. And unfortunately, Phoenix Forgotten can't quite do this. Like I said earlier, this did feel like a TV documentary, and I honestly think maybe this movie would have been better for that format, because this film has a lot of scenes of padding. There are tons of extra unnecessary scenes added into this movie, where they just have scenes that don't really relate to the kids, don't really relate to the events. They all intertwine, but sometimes it goes more into the family drama, or it goes into other things, and they don't really work, because you are so focused on the events and the teenagers that when it goes towards something else, it throws every single thing off. And I think that maybe if they went for a TV movie that was restricted to 1 hour instead of having to be an hour and 80 minutes to be, considered feature length, I think maybe it would have been a bit better. But at the same time, it's confusing how the footage, the fake footage that they created would have blended in with that. Because this movie is very unique, and you do have to give it props for that. When a movie comes out, and it's unique, and it's different, and it tries something new, you always gotta give it props for that. But this movie, sadly, does not have good execution. It's tonally inconsistent, it feels like a mess at times, there is a lot of interest here, but it's not quite the immersive experience that you want, and that is why I will end up giving Phoenix Forgotten a 5.5 out of 10. Much better than I was expecting, because I went into this movie expecting an awful film. I was honestly thinking that this would be the worst film of the year. Thankfully, we did not get that, because there was more originality and creativity here, just not the best execution. Anyways, that concludes my review for Phoenix Forgotten. What are your thoughts on this film? Comment in the comment section below and let me know. I'm Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.